The darkness of space held many secrets, but none were as dangerous as the Zephyrian Empire. For 300 years, they had moved through the galaxy like ghosts. Airships could not be seen, heard, or detected by any known technology. They were the perfect hunters, and every world they visited eventually fell. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his invisible ship, watching the blue and green planet below. Earth looked peaceful from this distance. The humans living there had no idea that death watched them from the void. His ship was one of 12 that surrounded the planet, each one completely hidden from human sensors. The Zephyrians had done this dance many times before. First, they would study their target for months. They would learn about the planet's people, their weapons, their weaknesses. They would find the best way to break them. Then, when they knew everything they needed to know, the invasion would begin. It always ended the same way. Veltar pulled up the reports on his screen. The humans seemed like easy prey. They were stuck on one world, barely able to reach their own moon. Their technology was simple. Most importantly, they were divided into many different nations that often fought each other. The Zephyrians had conquered united worlds before, but divided ones fell much faster. "Sir, we are picking up radio signals from the surface," reported Sub-Commander Kylonex. The humans seemed to be broadcasting entertainment programs to each other. Veltar nodded. This was normal. Most primitive species wasted their communication networks on useless chatter. It made them easier to study and easier to defeat. Continue monitoring all frequencies. I want to know everything about how they think. Far below, in a mountain deep in North America, Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat at his radar station. It was 3 in the morning, and the underground facility was quiet. Most of the other operators had gone home, leaving only the night shift to watch the screens. Jake had been doing this job for 2 years, and he knew what normal looked like. Tonight was not normal. There were small blips on his screen that appeared and disappeared. They were not aircraft, satellites, or weather patterns. They were something else. He leaned forward and adjusted his equipment. The blips were still there, moving in patterns that made no sense. They seemed to hover in empty air, then drift slowly across the sky. Sometimes they would stop for hours in one place, then suddenly move to another location. Colonel Warren. Jake called to his supervisor. "You need to see this." Colonel Lisa Warren walked over to Jake's station. She was a serious woman who had been watching radar screens since before Jake was born. She looked at the display and frowned. "Equipment malfunction," she said after a moment. "Run a diagnostic check." Jake had already run 3 diagnostic checks. Everything was working perfectly. "Ma'am, I think these might be real contacts. The patterns are too complex for random interference." Colonel Warren shook her head. "Morrison, in 20 years of doing this job, I've learned one thing. When you see something that should not be there, it usually is not there. Fix your equipment." But Jake could not let it go. After Colonel Warren returned to her office, he began taking screenshots of the strange readings. He started a log, noting the time and location of each mysterious contact. If these were real objects someone needed to know about them. 2,000 miles away, Dr. Alex Chun was having his own strange night. He worked at a research station that monitored deep space, looking for asteroids and other objects that might threaten Earth. His instruments were much more sensitive than military radar, designed to spot tiny rocks millions of miles away. Tonight, his gravitational sensors were showing impossible readings. There were massive objects in Earth's orbit that his optical telescopes could not see. The gravitational effects were small, but definitely real. Something big was out there, bending space and time in ways that only large masses could do. Alex ran the calculations again. The objects were huge, possibly the size of aircraft carriers. They were positioned around Earth in a pattern that looked almost military, but there was nothing there. Every camera, every telescope, every sensor showed empty space. He picked up his phone to call NASA, then put it down again. Who would believe him? He had readings of invisible objects that weighed millions of tons floating in space around Earth. It sounded like science fiction. Instead, he decided to gather more data. If these readings were real, the pattern would continue. If they were equipment errors, they would be random. Time would tell him which was true. Meanwhile, the Zephyrians continued their work. They recorded human television broadcasts and radio signals. They mapped military bases and government buildings. They studied human behavior and psychology. Everything was going according to their ancient plan. Veltar was particularly interested in human warfare. These creatures fought each other constantly, but their weapons were primitive. Chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their most advanced weapons could destroy cities, but they seemed afraid to use them. The Zephyrians had energy weapons that could crack planets. This would not be fair fight. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Zorthik from the sensor station, "we are detecting increased human military activity in several regions." Veltar frowned. "What kind of activity?" "Training exercises, mostly. Some changes in patrol patterns." "Nothing. That seems directed at us." This was normal, too. Military forces always had training exercises. The fact that human activity was increasing might be a coincidence, or it might mean they were preparing for war with each other. Either way, it would work in the Zephyrians' favor. What Veltar did not know was that Jake Morrison had found others, like himself. Using secure military communication channels, he had contacted radar operators at other bases. A Marine named Ryan Davis reported strange sonar readings in the ocean. An Air Force pilot named Amy Foster had seen odd radar shadows during training flights. Slowly, quietly, a network was forming. Humans who had noticed things that should not be there. They did not know what they were looking for yet, but they knew something was wrong. And humans, when they sensed danger, had a tendency to work together in ways that often surprised their enemies. The Zephyrians thought they were unseen. They had been unseen by 17 other civilizations, but they had never encountered a species quite like humans before. They were about to learn that being invisible and being unnoticed were not the same thing. 3 months had passed since the Zephyrian fleet arrived at Earth. Commander Veltar was growing confident in his mission. The humans still showed no signs of detecting the invisible ships. Their daily routines continued unchanged. Their military forces operated as they always had. Everything was perfect, but something was bothering Sub-Commander Kylonex. She had been studying human communication patterns for weeks, and she noticed small changes. Radio frequencies that were usually busy became quiet. Military bases that normally had predictable schedules started changing their routines. Ships and aircraft began taking different routes than before. "Sir, I think we should review the human behavioral data," Kylonex said during the morning briefing. Veltar looked up from his invasion plans. "What concerns you?" "The humans are changing their patterns. Not all at once, but gradually. Communication frequencies are shifting. Military exercises are happening in new locations. It might be coincidence, but the changes started about 6 weeks ago." Veltar considered this. In his experience, primitive species were creatures of habit. They did the same things in the same ways for years. Sudden changes usually meant internal conflict or natural disasters. Neither seemed to be happening on Earth. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "If the changes become significant, we will adjust our timeline." What Veltar did not know was that Jake Morrison had been very busy. The young radar operator had spent 3 months building a network of contacts across the human military. Using encrypted channels and careful words, He had found dozens of people who had noticed strange things. Captain Ryan Davis worked on a submarine in the Pacific Ocean. His sonar equipment picked up sounds that did not match any known sea life or human vessels. The sounds moved in straight lines at impossible speeds, then stopped for hours before moving again. When Ryan tried to get closer to investigate, the sounds would disappear. Lieutenant Amy Foster flew fighter jets for the Air Force. During training missions, her radar would sometimes show empty spaces where she felt sure something should be. Her instruments would work perfectly, but certain areas of sky seemed to have holes in them. Other pilots had noticed the same thing, but no one wanted to report it. Officially, Dr. Alex Chun had made progress with his gravitational readings. By working with scientists at other observatories, he had mapped the invisible objects more precisely. There were definitely 12 large masses in orbit around Earth. They moved in formation, like a military fleet. But optical telescopes showed nothing but empty space. The breakthrough came when Alex partnered with Kevin Liu, a computer expert who worked for the government. Kevin specialized in finding patterns in large amounts of data. When Alex showed him months of gravitational readings, Kevin saw something that excited him. "These objects are not random," Kevin said, pointing at his computer screen. "Look at the movement patterns. They are watching specific locations on Earth." Alex studied the data. Kevin was right. The invisible objects spent most of their time positioned over major cities, military bases, and government centers. They were conducting surveillance. "We need to tell someone about this," Alex said. "Who would believe us?" Kevin replied, "We have readings of invisible alien spaceships." It sounds crazy, but Kevin had an idea. If the objects were really there, they would affect more than just gravitational sensors. They would interact with radio waves, affect satellite communications, and create tiny disturbances in the atmosphere. These effects would be very small, but they would be measurable. Working together, Alex and Kevin began collecting data from sources across the globe. Weather satellites, communication networks, GPS systems, and radio telescopes all provided pieces of the puzzle. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The invisible objects were definitely real. They were large, they moved under intelligent control, and they were studying Earth. More importantly, their presence was creating detectable effects that could be tracked. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison had organized his growing network into something more formal. Military personnel from different branches began sharing information through secure channels. Marine Captain Ryan Davis provided underwater tracking data. Air Force Lieutenant Amy Foster contributed flight patterns and radar anomalies. Army radar. Operators from around the world sent reports of atmospheric disturbances. The pattern was becoming clear. Something invisible was watching Earth, and it was getting bolder. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked for CT, the organization that searched for signs of alien life. She had always hoped to find evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, but not like this. Her radio telescopes were picking up interference patterns that suggested something was intercepting and analyzing human communications. The interference was very subtle. A normal radio signal would be delayed by a few microseconds, or its frequency would be shifted by tiny amounts. Individual cases meant nothing, but Elena had found thousands of them. Something was listening to human radio broadcasts and studying them. When Elena shared her findings with Jake Morrison's network, the pieces began fitting together. The invisible objects were not just watching Earth. They were intercepting communications, studying human behavior, and learning everything they could about human civilization. Back on the Zephyrian command ship, Veltar was receiving reports that made him uncomfortable. Human military exercises were becoming more frequent. Communication patterns were changing faster than before. Most disturbing of all, some human activities seemed to be happening in locations where Zephyrian ships were positioned. "Sir, human," Aircraft conducted training exercises directly below our position yesterday, reported Lieutenant Zorthik. They flew in formation patterns for 3 hours, then departed. Veltar frowned. Coincidence. Their flight paths cross our position regularly. Yes, sir, but this is the 4th time this month. And similar incidents have been reported by other ships in the fleet. This was troubling. If it happened once or twice, it could be explained as coincidence. But if it was happening regularly across the entire fleet, it suggested something more organized. Increase our monitoring of human communications, Veltar. Ordered. I want to know if they are planning something. What Veltar could not know was that humans were very good at recognizing patterns, even when they could not see the cause. Jake Morrison's network had grown to include hundreds of military personnel, scientists, and technicians. They were sharing information, comparing notes, and slowly building a picture of the invisible threat. Dr. Amanda Walsh, a quantum physicist at a major university, had joined the network after Kevin Liu contacted her. She had a theory about how the invisible objects might work. If they were using some kind of advanced cloaking technology, they would still have to interact with the physical world. That interaction would leave traces that could be detected with the right instruments. Amanda began designing new types of sensors that could detect quantum effects, electromagnetic disturbances, and space-time distortions. Her work was theoretical, but if she was right, it might be possible to see the invisible. The Zephyrians thought they were perfectly hidden. They had used the same cloaking technology for centuries, and it had never failed them. But they had never faced a species that could adapt so quickly to new threats. They had never encountered humans before. As the 3rd month ended, both sides were preparing for the next phase of their conflict. The Zephyrians were planning their invasion, confident that their prey remained unaware. The humans were building detection networks and preparing countermeasures against an enemy they could not yet see. The invisible watchers were about to discover that being unseen did not mean being unnoticed. And the humans were about to prove that sometimes the best way to fight an invisible enemy is to make them think they are still hidden while you learn everything about them. The secure briefing room in Washington was filled with the most important people in the American government. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the table, looking at reports that seemed impossible to believe. Around her sat generals, scientists, and intelligence officers who had spent weeks verifying the same incredible conclusion. Tell me again, President Carter said to the man at her right. You are absolutely certain about this? Defense Secretary Paul Adams nodded grimly. Madam President, we have confirmation from multiple sources. There are large, invisible objects in orbit around Earth. They have been there for months, and they appear to be conducting surveillance operations. Dr. Alex Chun stood up to present his findings. His hands shook slightly as he activated the display screen. These are gravitational readings from observatories around the world. The objects are massive, roughly the size of aircraft carriers. They move in coordinated patterns and spend most of their time positioned over major population centers. General Maria Santos, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, added her own evidence. Our network of military contacts has documented thousands of unusual readings: radar anomalies, sonar contacts, communication interference. The pattern is consistent with advanced surveillance technology. President Carter studied the data for a long moment. She had been briefed on many strange situations during her time in office, but nothing like this. What are we dealing with? Here, foreign governments? Some kind of secret technology? Ma'am, said CIA Director Robert Clark, we have ruled out all known human technology. The capabilities we are seeing are beyond anything that exists on Earth. We believe we are dealing with extraterrestrial intelligence. The room fell silent. Even though everyone present had seen the evidence, Hearing it stated so clearly was still shocking. Earth was under observation by beings from another world. What do they want? President Carter asked. Based on their behavior, answered Dr. Elena Rodriguez, they appear to be studying us, learning our capabilities, our weaknesses, our social structures. This is consistent with reconnaissance operations that might precede an invasion. General Santos leaned forward. Madam President, we need to assume hostile intent. No friendly civilization would study us in secret for months without making contact. President Carter made her decision. General Santos, I am authorizing Project Looking Glass. You have full authority to coordinate with our allies and develop countermeasures against this threat. Whatever resources you need, you will have them. Within hours, secure communications were being sent to governments around the world. The response was swift and unprecedented. Nations that had been enemies for decades suddenly found themselves working together against a common threat. The Invisible Watchers had done something that human diplomats had failed to achieve for centuries. They had united Earth. Jake Morrison found himself transferred from his quiet radar station to a high-security facility in Colorado. The young lieutenant was now part of a team that included the world's best scientists and military personnel. His job was to help create a global tracking network that could follow invisible objects anywhere on Earth. The key is understanding that invisible does not mean undetectable, explained Dr. Amanda Walsh to the assembled team. These objects still have mass. They still displace air and water. They still generate heat and electromagnetic fields. We just need to look for the right signs. Captain Ryan Davis had been assigned to coordinate underwater detection efforts. His submarine crews were now equipped with new sensors designed to detect the pressure waves and thermal signatures left by invisible objects moving through the ocean. We know they use the oceans as highways, Ryan told his team. Every time one of these things moves underwater, it creates detectable disturbances. We are going to map every movement they make. Lieutenant Amy Foster was working with aerospace engineers to modify fighter jets with quantum detection systems. Her squadron would be the first to attempt visual contact with the invisible enemy. The theory is that their cloaking technology bends light around their ships, Amy explained to her pilots. But if we can detect their quantum signatures, we can track them even when we cannot see them. Meanwhile, Commander Veltar was becoming increasingly concerned about human behavior. What had started as subtle changes was now becoming obvious patterns. Human military forces were repositioning assets in ways that seemed to anticipate Zephyrian movements. Sir, we have a problem, reported Sub-Commander Kylenex during the daily briefing. Human communication patterns have changed dramatically. They are using new encryption methods and frequency ranges that we cannot easily intercept. Veltar studied the tactical display. Red dots marked the positions of his 12 ships, while blue symbols showed human military assets. The blue symbols were moving in ways that seemed to respond to the red dots, even though the humans should not be able to see them. Are you suggesting that they can detect us? Veltar asked. I am suggesting that their behavior is not random, Kylenex replied. Yesterday, human aircraft conducted exercises in formation around 3 of our ships. Today, naval vessels are positioned directly below our fleet. These could be coincidences, but the probability is becoming very low. Lieutenant Zorthek added his own disturbing report. Sir, we have also detected new types of sensor emissions from the surface. The humans are broadcasting on frequencies that we have never seen them use before. Veltar felt a chill of fear. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrians had never faced a situation like this. Their cloaking technology was perfect. It had been tested against the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. How could these primitive humans possibly detect them? Send a message to High Command, Veltar ordered. Request guidance on how to proceed if the target species has developed detection capabilities. The response from Zephyrian High Command was swift and brutal. Impossible. No species has ever penetrated our cloaking technology. Continue the mission as planned. Prepare for invasion. But Veltar knew something was wrong. The evidence was becoming too strong to ignore. Somehow, the humans were tracking his invisible fleet. On Earth, the global detection network was becoming operational. Satellites had been repositioned to monitor gravitational anomalies. Radar stations had been upgraded with new detection algorithms. Ocean monitoring stations were tracking underwater movements. The entire planet was becoming one giant sensor array. Dr. Kevin Liu was coordinating the data from his command center in Nevada. Screens around him showed real-time tracking information from hundreds of sources around the world. For the first time, humans could see the invisible fleet that surrounded their planet. "We have 12 confirmed contacts," Kevin announced to the global command network. "All objects are maintaining stable orbits. They appear to be conducting systematic surveillance of major population centers." President Carter received the update in her Situation Room. The invisible threat was no longer invisible. Earth's defenders could see their enemy clearly. "How long before we can take action?" she asked General Santos. "We are still developing our response capabilities," the general replied. "But we should be ready within days. The aliens think they are still hidden. That gives us a significant advantage." What the Zephyrians did not understand was that humans had evolved as hunters. For millions of years, they had tracked prey that tried to hide from them. They had developed instincts for detecting danger, for finding patterns, for working together against threats. The invisible aliens had awakened these ancient skills. The Watchers were still confident in their invisibility. They did not know that their prey had already seen them and was preparing to strike back. The hunt was about to become very different from what either side expected. 6 months after the invisible fleet arrived at Earth, humanity was ready. In secret facilities around the world, the final preparations were being made. Project Looking Glass had grown into the largest military operation in human history, involving every major nation on the planet. General Maria Santos stood in the command center buried deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Around her, dozens of screens showed the positions of all 12 alien ships. The invisible fleet was no longer invisible to human eyes. Months of careful observation had revealed their patterns, their habits, and their weaknesses. "All stations. Report ready," announced Dr. Kevin Liu from his position at the main control panel. "Global tracking network is fully operational. We have real-time locations on all hostile contacts." President Helen Carter was connected by secure video link from Washington. "General Santos, you have authorization to proceed. Show these aliens what happens when they underestimate humanity." The plan was simple, but required perfect timing. Using the predictive algorithms developed by Jake Morrison's team, they had calculated exactly when and where the alien command ship would be positioned. Every 6 hours, the largest alien vessel moved to a specific location above the Pacific Ocean to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. Lieutenant Amy Foster was already in the air, leading a squadron of 12 modified F-22 fighters. Her aircraft had been equipped with the quantum detection systems developed by Dr. Amanda Walsh. For the first time in history, human pilots would engage an enemy they could track but not see with their eyes. "Phoenix Squadron, this is command," came the voice through Amy's radio. "Target will be in position in 3 minutes. Maintain formation and await orders." Amy checked her instruments. The quantum sensors showed a massive object directly ahead, roughly 2 miles long and half a mile wide. It was the largest of the alien ships, probably their command vessel. Her targeting computer had a solid lock, even though her eyes saw only Empty sky. Phoenix leader to Phoenix Squadron. Amy transmitted to her pilots. Remember, trust your instruments. The target is real, even if you cannot see it. Stay in formation and follow my lead. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Davis was positioning his submarine fleet in the waters below the alien ship. His sonar operators had been tracking the invisible vessels for months, learning their acoustic signatures. The aliens might be invisible too. Light, but they could not hide from sound waves in the ocean. Sonar contact confirmed, reported his chief sonar operator. Large object bearing 090, range 4,000 yards. It matches the signature of the command ship. Ryan nodded. His submarines were equipped with new sonic weapons designed to disrupt alien technology. The theory was that if the aliens used some kind of field to bend light around their ships, a powerful sonic pulse might interfere with that field. All boats prepare sonic pulse weapons, Ryan ordered. Target the main contact. Fire on my command. In orbit above Earth, Commander Veltar was reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The humans continued to behave strangely, but his superiors insisted that detection was impossible. The Zephyrian cloaking technology had never failed. It could not be failing now. Sir, we are detecting unusual human activity in this sector, reported Sub-Commander Kylanix. Multiple aircraft approaching our position, and naval vessels directly below us. Veltar looked at the tactical display. Human forces were indeed converging on their location, but this had happened before. Coincidence? The humans conduct military exercises regularly, maintain position, and continue monitoring. What Veltar did not know was that Dr. Amanda Walsh had made a breakthrough in quantum physics that revealed the secret of Zephyrian cloaking technology. The aliens were not making their ships invisible. They were shifting them slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. It was an elegant solution, but it had a critical weakness. All units, this is command, came the voice over the global communication network. Operation Spotlight is now active. Execute on my mark. Around the world, the coordinated attack began. Satellites repositioned themselves to focus quantum disruption beams on the alien ships. Ground-based installations activated powerful electromagnetic pulse generators. Ocean monitoring stations sent focused sonic waves toward underwater alien. Contacts. Jake Morrison, now promoted to captain, was coordinating the global sensor network from his command post. I have confirmation from all tracking stations. All 12 alien contacts are locked on target. Beginning quantum disruption sequence. The effect was immediate and spectacular. As the quantum disruption fields activated, the Zephyrian cloaking systems began to fail. One by one, the invisible ships began to flicker into visibility, like mirages becoming solid. Commander Veltar watched in horror as his command bridge lit up with alarms. What is happening? He demanded. Sir, our cloaking matrix is destabilizing, reported the chief engineer. We are detecting massive quantum interference from the planet's surface. Through the viewports of his ship, Veltar could see something that should have been impossible. Human aircraft were flying in formation around his vessel, their weapons. Systems clearly targeting his ship. Below, human naval vessels had appeared as if from nowhere, surrounding his position. Impossible, Veltar whispered. They cannot see us. They cannot detect us. But the evidence was right in front of him. Not only could the humans see his ship, they had surrounded his entire fleet with perfect precision. 12 human fighter squadrons had appeared around 12 alien vessels. It was not a coincidence. It was a coordinated military operation. Sir, incoming transmission from the human forces, reported the communications officer. Put it through, Veltar ordered, his voice shaking. The transmission came through clearly on speakers throughout the Zephyrian fleet. It was a human voice, speaking in perfect Zephyrian language. Attention, alien vessels. This is General Maria Santos of the United Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded, and your cloaking systems have been disabled. We know you are there. We know what you are doing. And we know why you are here. Veltar felt his world collapse around him. The humans not only could see his ships, they could speak his language. They had been studying the Zephyrians just as carefully as the Zephyrians had been studying them. We have been watching you watch us, the human voice continued. For 6 months, you have observed our world, thinking you were invisible. You were wrong. We saw you from the beginning. We learned your patterns, your technology, your weaknesses. Now it is time to talk. Sub-Commander Kylanex stared at her instruments in disbelief. Sir, they have disabled our cloaking systems completely. All 12 ships are now visible to their sensors. Veltar looked at his tactical display. Red warnings covered every screen. His fleet was surrounded by human forces that had appeared with impossible precision. Every escape route was blocked. Every weapon system was targeted. Send a message to High Command, Veltar ordered desperately. Tell them the humans have detection capabilities. Tell them we have been compromised. But even as he gave the order, Veltar realized the truth. The humans had not just detected the Zephyrian fleet. They had been playing a game for months, pretending not to see while they prepared their response. The hunters had become the hunted. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked through her cockpit at the massive alien ship that had suddenly appeared in front of her. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, made of what looked like crystal and metal. For months, she had been tracking invisible enemies. Now she could finally see what she had been hunting. Phoenix leader to command, Amy reported. Target is fully visible and locked on. Alien vessel is not responding to our hails, awaiting further orders. General Santos smiled grimly in her command center. The trap had worked perfectly. Humanity had proven that they could turn the tables on even the most advanced predators in the galaxy. All units maintain position, she ordered. Let our visitors think about their situation. They came here to study us. Now they are about to learn what humans are really capable of. The news traveled through the Zephyrian Empire faster than light itself. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, a surveillance fleet had been detected and surrounded by their intended prey. High Command emergency meetings were called on dozens of worlds as military leaders tried to understand what had gone wrong. Admiral Keth Volume, Supreme Commander of the Zephyrian Fleet, stared at the reports in disbelief. You are telling me that primitive humans not only detected our ships, but learned our language and disabled our cloaking systems? The communications officer nodded nervously. Yes, Admiral. Commander Veltar's last transmission confirmed that all 12 ships are now visible and surrounded by human forces. The humans appear to have been tracking the fleet for months. Admiral Keth Volume had conquered 47 worlds. He had never encountered a species capable of detecting Zephyrian technology, much less countering it. The humans were supposed to be simple creatures, barely capable of reaching their own moon. How had they achieved the impossible? On Earth, Commander Veltar faced the most humiliating moment of his military career. His invisible fleet was now fully visible, surrounded by human aircraft and naval vessels. Worse, the humans were speaking to him in perfect Zephyrian language, proving they had been intercepting and decoding his communications for months. Commander Veltar, came the voice of General Santos through the ship's speakers. We are prepared to begin negotiations. You have 2 choices. You can attempt to fight your way out and face destruction, or you can talk to us like civilized beings. What is your decision? Veltar looked around his bridge. His officers were waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? His ships were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that should not exist. Fighting would mean certain death for his entire crew. Open a communication channel, Veltar ordered reluctantly. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the human diplomatic team from a secure facility in Geneva. She had spent months learning Zephyrian language and culture from intercepted communications. When the alien commander's face appeared on her screen, she was ready. "Commander Veltar," Elena said in careful Zephyrian, "I am Dr. Elena Rodriguez, representing the people of Earth. We welcome this opportunity to speak with you directly." Veltar was shocked. The human spoke his language with only a slight accent. Her knowledge of proper Zephyrian diplomatic protocols was impressive. These creatures had been studying his people as carefully as he had been studying them. "How?" Veltar asked simply. "How did you detect us?" "Our cloaking technology is perfect. No species has ever penetrated it." Elena smiled. "Commander, your technology is indeed advanced. But you made one critical error. You assumed that invisibility means undetectable. You forgot that everything in the universe leaves traces. Mass, gravity, electromagnetic fields, quantum signatures. We simply learned to look for the right signs." Jake Morrison, now part of the diplomatic security team, watched the conversation from the control room. 6 months ago, he had been a simple radar operator who noticed strange blips on his screen. Now he was witnessing the first peaceful contact between humanity and an alien civilization. "The key was pattern recognition," Elena continued. "Humans are very good at finding patterns, even when we cannot see the source. Your ships created detectable effects wherever they went. Once we learned what to look for, tracking you became possible." Veltar was beginning to understand the scope of his failure. "You have been tracking us for months?" "Since the second week after your arrival," Elena confirmed. "We noticed the gravitational anomalies first, then the atmospheric disturbances, then the communication interference. It took time to put all the pieces together, but yes, we have known about your presence for quite a while." This revelation sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian fleet. They had been conducting what they thought was secret surveillance while their targets watched them the entire time. It was the worst intelligence failure in Zephyrian history. "What do you want from us?" Veltar asked. "That depends on what you want from us," Elena replied. "Your behavior suggests hostile intent. Months of secret surveillance usually precedes invasion. Is that your plan?" Veltar hesitated. Military doctrine said he should never reveal operational details to the enemy. But these humans had already demonstrated they knew far more about Zephyrian capabilities than any enemy should. Lying seemed pointless. "Yes," he admitted. "We came to study your world before conquest. That is our way." Elena nodded. "We suspected as much. But, Commander, you have made a serious miscalculation. Earth is not defenseless. We are not the primitive species you expected to find." President Carter joined the conversation from Washington, her image appearing on screens throughout the Zephyrian fleet. "Commander Veltar, I am President Helen Carter. I speak for all the nations of Earth when I say this. We do not want war with your people, but we will not be conquered either." Veltar studied the human leader. She spoke with authority and confidence, showing no fear despite facing a technologically superior alien force. "What are you proposing?" "A new kind of relationship," President Carter replied. "You came here expecting to find victims. Instead, you found equals. Perhaps it is time for both our species to learn from each other." Dr. Amanda Walsh joined this conversation to explain humanity's breakthrough in quantum physics. "Commander, we have not only detected your cloaking technology, we understand how it works. Your ship's phase shift out of normal space-time. It is elegant, but it has weaknesses we can exploit." Veltar realized the full implications of what she was saying. The humans had not just detected his fleet by accident. They had reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology from sensor readings alone. These creatures were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Your high command will not accept failure, Veltar said. They will send more ships. Let them come, General Santos replied. We will be ready. But more importantly, Commander, you now have a choice. You can return to your empire as a failure, or you can return as the person who made first contact with a species that could become a valuable ally. The conversation continued for hours, as both sides explored possibilities neither had considered. Before, the Zephyrians had expected easy conquest, but found worthy opponents instead. The humans had prepared for invasion, but discovered potential partners. Admiral Keth Volume received regular updates from the negotiations. Each report was more shocking than the last. The humans had capabilities that rivaled advanced civilizations. They had turned the tables on the Empire's best surveillance technology. Most importantly, they had done it through cooperation and intelligence rather than superior weapons. Admiral, reported his intelligence chief, the humans have made us an offer. They propose a cultural and technological exchange program. They want to learn from us, and they want to teach us their methods. Keth Volume considered this carefully. The Zephyrian Empire had grown through conquest for 1,000 years. But here was a species that offered something different. They offered partnership instead of submission. Commander Veltar made his decision. Dr. Rodriguez, I will recommend to my superiors that we accept your proposal. Earth has proven that some worlds cannot be conquered. Perhaps they can be befriended. Instead, Elena smiled. Commander, I think this could be the beginning of a very interesting relationship. Welcome to Earth. Let us show you what humanity is really capable of when we work together instead of against each other. The first peaceful contact between humanity and an alien civilization had begun not with conquest or submission, but with mutual respect earned through strength. The Zephyrians had come to Earth as hunters, but found themselves becoming partners with the most adaptable species they had ever encountered. The invisible watchers had learned that being unseen was not the same as being unnoticed. And humanity had proven that sometimes the best way to make friends with a predator is to show them that you are not prey.